You like to draw, but despite this, there will be times when, for whatever reason, you simply cannot bring yourself to pick up your pen and make some art. Why? Well, it's quite simple. You need to fix your brain. And so I'm going to tell you how to fix your brain by first explaining to you why you're such a master procrastinator, the exact part of your brain that determines how consistent you are at drawing, and then we're going to use all this knowledge to go from a lazy artist to a kind of consistent artist to actually craving art, where it's more than just some regular habit that you do. And to start things off, I'm going to tell you about this one psychologist who was named Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi. So one day a while ago, Mihaly was walking around and he came across a group of painters. And so he sat down and watched them paint, and he noticed something very interesting about them, which led him to write about flow state. If you've heard of the concept of flow state or getting in the zone, it's a pretty popular topic on YouTube. He's the guy who first came up with that. And one of his biggest inspirations for that was these painters. So he's watching these painters paint, and he'd noticed that they would finish a painting, put the canvas to the side, pick up a new canvas, and pretty much immediately begin working on a new painting. And the conclusion he drew was that they weren't painting just to finish the painting, or just to sell it or anything like that. These guys are just so fully immersed in the process of making art that they were painting just for the sake of painting, just for the joy of painting. Now, I've never met these painters, me personally, because this all happened in the 60s or 70s. That's when he wrote the first book, and I was still a kid back then. But I genuinely believe that this is what it's like to be truly obsessed with art. And so the first step to achieving that state is to understand from a scientific side of things why a lot of artists can't even pick up their pencil to draw consistently, let alone be obsessed or anything. And so we're going to put things this way. Let me know if you've ever been in a similar-ish situation to this. So say you're practicing color, for example, and you're following along to a 1-hour YouTube color study tutorial. And let's say 15 or so minutes in, you begin to kind of get bored of it. And you're like, man, I kind of don't feel like doing this. But on the other hand, you really do genuinely want to learn color. You want to finish this tutorial because, you want to be a good artist. So as you're deliberating between which of these two choices to make, there's two very specific systems in your brain that are at work. And these systems, they go by many names, but we're going to refer to them as the reflexive system and the deliberate system. And these two kind of brain systems play a very major role in determining which decision you're going to make. So what are they, right? So the reflexive system is a more kind of short-term thinking, quick thinking. I like to think of it as your oogaboo, your caveman part of your brain, because it deals with a lot of automatic thinking, impulsive thinking, instinct, that kind of vibe. And on the other hand, your deliberate system is a lot more effortful. It's a lot more intentional, rational in a way. Your more long-term thinking, strategizing system. It's that kind of thing. I'll put some additional details on screen if you want to nerd out, but the exact details really don't matter much. The main thing I want you to understand is that reflexive system, short-term thinking, which is good for when you need to make quick decisions on the fly, that kind of vibe. And deliberate system is more long-term thinking, strategizing, that kind of thing. And so let's apply this concepts to our kind of 1-hour YouTube colors tutorial example, where you get bored 15 minutes in, you kind of want to stop, you're kind of bored, but that conflicts with your desire to improve your art. So what's happening here, right? On the one hand, your kind of reflexive ooga booga caveman brain system is thinking about right now. It's thinking about here and now. I'm kind of bored. I want to do something else. There's a lot more interesting things you can do right now. So let's go and do them, right? It's thinking about right now, short term. Whereas your deliberate, rational kind of system is thinking, hold on a second. Finishing this tutorial is going to help us get a lot closer to achieving our art goals. So even though we're kind of bored right now, we probably should continue. It's thinking about the long-term benefits. And in this scenario, what we essentially want is that ability to go, yeah, I kind of don't feel like doing this right now, but continuing this tutorial would be the best decision for my artistic goals or something. And this process where your deliberate system is able to kind of, in a sense, override your reflexive ooga booga caveman system, this process is an example of top-down control, which is also called, maybe you could call it willpower, you could call it discipline, but I'm going to call it top-down control because it's a less common term and it makes me feel smart. And so we want the ability to do that, but the thing is, our deliberate system, it takes up a lot of energy, and our brains are lazy. It doesn't want to expend energy that it doesn't have to. So for the most part, our reflexive caveman brain system is usually the default, which could be the reason, probably not the only reason, but it could be one of the reasons why you're such a master procrastinator. It's your reflexive system is always out there calling the shots, making those impulsive decisions that may kind of you want to do right now, but might not be the best for your long-term goals. And so we want to kind of flip that switch. We want to kind of make our deliberate system, in a sense, more dominant, which is going to be an important step one to becoming like the painters that we discussed a few minutes ago. And so in order to do that, we're going to go into the main focus of the rest of this video. We're going to talk about this insane part of your brain, which is kind of more involved in the deliberate system. This part of your brain known as the AMCC, or the anterior mid-cingulate cortex. Ooh, crazy. So if you want to draw more often, but you struggle with getting yourself to do that, one of the factors that could be at play is that you probably have a, in a sense, weak AMCC. So what is the AMCC? The AMCC is this part of your brain that's really deep in there that, you know, talks to a lot of other parts of your brain. The other parts of your brain talk to it a lot, and it plays a major and a very interesting role in being consistent at drawing. So in our 1 hour YouTube color study example, where you get bored 15 or so minutes in, let's say in that scenario, let's say there's two possible outcomes, right? Let's say there's one outcome where you continue with the study tutorial even if you don't feel like it, and a second outcome in which you don't continue with the study tutorial because you don't feel like it. In that first scenario, where you continue despite not feeling like it, that required a relatively high activation in your AMCC. And that's kind of how the AMCC works. When you do something that you kind of don't want to do, or in a sense even resist something that you really don't want to resist, your AMCC gets activated, and that's what's able to kind of push you through that resistance. Because say for example, having the willpower to push through that 1 hour YouTube tutorial, let's say that was difficult for you to get yourself to do. Let's say it was 8 out of 10 difficulty for you, right? To be able to do that. But as you strengthen your AMCC, that same task might go down to like a 6 or 5 or 4 out of 10 levels of difficulty, because you've got literally a stronger AMCC that can handle that task a lot better. You know what I mean? Alright, so obviously we want a stronger AMCC, duh. So we're going to talk about how to do that. But before that, the coolest thing is the fact that you have one AMCC, right? Okay, technically you have two AMCCs. There's like one on each side of your brain. It's kind of like a strip, but it's like one party, it's like one region, it's like the same thing, right? So the coolest thing is the fact that if you improve your AMCC for the sake of your art, right, because you want to be more consistent at drawing, this is going to end up spilling over into other areas of your life that require willpower, something like studying or exercising regularly or dieting or whatever your thing is, because it's the same AMCC that's handling all of these tasks, which is kind of convenient if you ask me. So let's talk about that, right? Let's talk about strengthening your AMCCs. And we're gonna talk about kind of two ways you can do this: the harder way and the easier way. So the harder way. So say you're sat there trying to push through that 1 hour YouTube color tutorial video, and as you said, that would require high activation in the AMCC. And that high activation is really what leads to the eventual strengthening of the AMCC, which means that in the future it's going to be a lot easier for you and a lot likelier for you to be able to complete a 1 hour YouTube drawing tutorial. So what are we saying here? We're saying that in order to strengthen your AMCC, use it more often, kind of make yourself push through resistance. But when you really think about it, that's very useless advice, because what I'm basically telling you is, hey bro, if you procrastinate drawing, just don't procrastinate drawing, and then your AMCC is gonna grow, bro. Ha. Which is kind of like, if you're homeless, just buy a house, right? So the reason I said all that is just so that you know that that's how the mechanism works. So let's take that and use it for a more applicable, an easier way, not easy, but easier, that kind of strategy you can deploy to kind of strengthen our AMCC and kind of gradually begin to get more consistent at drawing. And what this offers us is a very straightforward way for... Alright, pop quiz. I'm just trying to see if you understand what we said so far, okay? So, answer this question, right? I like to play soccer, kind of just for fun, right? So sometimes when I'm playing soccer in a game, let's say moments might arise where I'm super tired, like I'm gassed, I'm panting like crazy, right? Because I've been running around for like an hour. But then say a situation arises in the game where I have to make a 10 or 15 yard sprint to get to the ball or something like that. And bro, I am I'm like, like that kind of tired, right? So in this moment, say I'm able to make myself run and sprint and get the ball. What effect is this going to have on my AMCC? Strengthen it, weaken it, or no effect? Okay, cool. If you said strengthen it, you are wrong. If you said weaken it, have you even been listening to me, bro? The correct answer is no effect. Here, let me tell you why. So, when I choose to make this sprint to the ball, am I tired? Yes. Do I feel like my lungs are about to explode out of my chest? Yes. Do I feel like I'm about to die? Maybe, just a little bit, okay? But at the end of the day, this is something I really like to do. And these moments where I'm pushing my body like this, in moments of fatigue like this, I find it kind of fun. I'm not gonna lie. I'm not like a masochist or anything like that, but soccer is just one of my favorite things to do. So, and at no point does the thought in my head of, man, I kind of don't want to go and run all the way to that ball. At no point does that thought come into my head, because I am going to make that run, obviously, duh. And so, because despite this being a physically hard thing to do, like it's difficult physically to do, it's not going to lead to that much activation in the AMCC, because it's just something that I enjoy doing anyway. Because you can enjoy doing something that's hard, you know what I mean? Okay, alright, so the MC is such like a central part of your brain that's actually probably active all the time in one way or another. But in the context of this video and in the context of willpower and stuff like that, I'm not going to experience that much AMCC activation, as opposed to if this is something I really didn't want to do. Because when it comes to strengthening the AMCC, the most important thing is not that what you're doing is inherently like such a difficult thing to do. The important thing is that it's something that you don't feel like doing.
If, for instance, you love cold showers and ice baths, well, then it's very unlikely that taking cold showers or getting into an ice bath is going to increase your level of tenacity and willpower further. The ability to engage the anterior mid-cingulate cortex and to build up its volume, literally, and increase its activity relies on one critical feature, which is that you have to be in some degree of resistance, some lack of desire, or I should say lack of reflexive desire or ability to engage in that behavior.
And what this offers us is a very straightforward way for AMCC strengthening. So we're going to put it this way, right? You individual or group, I guess, what are the odds that you go into the bathroom with your phone? Or what are the odds that when you wake up in the morning, you lay in bed for a few minutes before actually getting up out of bed? Or maybe what are the odds that you cannot eat a meal without having a YouTube video playing? What are the odds that you're eating a meal while you're watching this YouTube video right now? Now, everything I've laid out are very common scenarios that offer the perfect opportunity for you to begin to kind of train your AMCC. Because these are things that, or it could be other stuff, right, obviously, but these might be things that you're very used to doing. So trying to stop them is actually going to be kind of hard. And they're not like super taxing on the brain and body, but they're kind of things that are like, if you try to stop doing them, it's like, man, but I feel like doing it, or man, I kind of don't feel like doing that. And it could be so many things. It could be like trying to wait in line without whipping out your phone, or actually washing your plate instead of just dumping it in the sink or in the dishwasher, actually washing it yourself. Just things that you kind of don't feel like doing, or that you're trying to stop yourself from doing something that you impulsively want to do. So these are just some like mini resistances that you might face multiple times a day, that if you're able to resist yourself from doing it, or actually make yourself do it despite not really feeling like it, it's a very minor thing, but stacking those up over a long period of time is gonna contribute a lot to strengthening your AMCC. And as we said, this thing will gradually begin to apply to your drawing as well, where a time might come where you want to draw, but you kind of don't feel like it, but you've been honing your skill of doing stuff that you kind of don't feel like doing. So it's going to be a lot likelier for you and a lot easier for you to actually push through that resistance and get yourself to draw on a much more regular basis, which is kind of cool if you ask me. And so that's really the thing with this AMCC of ours. As it gets stronger, what once was difficult becomes a lot easier. So alright, I need to make like one more interruption because I forgot to say this without scripting it. But for this entire thing, something else you really need to keep in mind is, alright, say for example you do cocaine. I hope you don't, but just let's say for example you do cocaine. Now we all know what cocaine we all know what cocaine can do, not from first-hand experience, I hope, but it's, you take it and you get like a really massive like rush, right? And people who are addicted to cocaine, all they care about, they will do anything to get more of it somehow, because everything else in their life pales in comparison. Now, for to kind of bring that to a more relatable kind of example, there's things, for example, doom scrolling, right? Doom scrolling is very fast paced, a very stimulating kind of thing. And if you doom scroll a lot, it can make the task of drawing seem a lot more boring, since drawing is a very slow paced kind of thing. So what I'm basically saying is try to like reduce all like the fast paced, highly stimulating stuff in your day, basically, because those are things that could kind of contribute to you not feeling like drawing. So yeah, don't do cocaine, hopefully, and try to limit doing stuff regularly that are really kind of fast-paced and stimulating to your brain. And also, by the way, nothing we've talked about in this video, nothing we've talked about in this video matters at all if you're not getting enough sleep. So I'm just saying that, bro. If you're not sleeping right, like, just ignore everything else in this video and try to get that straight first, okay? Cool. So in an imaginary world where you take what I've said here and maybe even do a bit more research on your own, and you start doing all this stuff, and within a few weeks you've strengthened your AMCC, which is great, right? But remember the painters at the start. These are guys who weren't just consistent at drawing, but these are guys who are completely immersed in the craft. So how do we get to that level? And the sort of way I like to think about it is, okay. I gotta lock in, bro. This is one of my favorite concepts to talk about. Okay. So if you take the YouTube study tutorial example that we've been using throughout this video, and say, no, you're 15 minutes in and you get bored, but you tell yourself, no, all right, I want to be a good artist. I love making art. This right here is what I need to do to make art at a higher level. And you're able to kind of talk to yourself like this, and you're able to push through that resistance. What will very likely happen is, first of all, after the first few minutes after experiencing that resistance, you won't feel like not drawing anymore, because what at least I've found, and I see a few other people say this like in comments and stuff, is that when you get that feeling of not feeling like drawing, but you're able to push yourself through that resistance is usually temporary. It maybe lasts a few minutes, and after that you kind of ease into the whatever thing you're drawing is, right? And you've been able to tell yourself why what you're doing right now is the best thing you could be doing for your artistic goals. You know, you've been able to successfully execute top-down control, where your deliberate thinking system has overridden your short-term ooga booga caveman brain system. All right, which is great. And the thing is, doing this every time you experience this resistance while you're drawing, just kind of talking to yourself like this, pushing through that friction, and with enough time, this will begin to kind of rewire your connections in your brain, since our brains are very malleable, right? They're very liable to change. So doing this over time will begin to kind of rewire those structures in your brain and stuff, and it'll actually get you to a point where you're able to enjoy the process a lot more. You're able to enjoy getting through that friction. You enjoy the effort of getting through that friction a lot more, and you get to a point where you gain a lot more enjoyment and fulfillment from the process of just drawing, because you've been able to hammer in that idea, that long-term thinking system idea of, I really want to be a good artist, and I am literally making art right now, so therefore there's nothing better I could possibly be doing right now for my artistic goals, right? You've been able to kind of hammer that idea in, and that's what's getting you excited. Whereas before, the idea of putting off the tutorial and going and doing something else, that's what was getting you excited. So you've been able to make a kind of switch right there, you know what I mean? And at this point, and for everything we've talked about so far, it's not like it's just your, I just want to make this clear, bro, because I know some people are going to say it. It's not like it's just your AMCC doing all the work, or it's not like the only thing your AMCC does is the consistency with habits stuff, right? The brain is super complex. The AMCC does a lot of stuff. And when it comes to being consistent at drawing, there's a lot of factors that go into it, not just your AMCC strength level or whatever. And I know a lot of people might ask me about this, but yeah, your AMCC kind of communicates a lot with the dopamine system. I'm saying that because I made a video a while back about dopamine, talking about dopamine and its relation to motivation with drawing and stuff. So I kind of see this video as a sort of sequel to that, since we're exploring the same concept, a similar concept from a different angle. So yeah.